He always sat in the back rows. No one really noticed his presence, as if he were a shadow among the noisy students. His old jacket, worn-out sneakers, logo-free bag, and the cheapest food from the university cafeteria. Everything about him screamed poverty. "Hey, with your lunch again?" A few guys laughed, opening bright fast food packages. "Dude, buy yourself at least a normal phone, not that museum piece," another added, showing off his brand-new smartphone with a glowing screen. He just gave a faint smile and turned his gaze toward the window. His silence annoyed them even more than his appearance. It was as if he truly didn't hear their words, or they were so insignificant to him that they didn't deserve a response. One day, during a practical class, the computers froze. Panic spread through the room. Files disappeared. Programs refused to start. The teacher nervously paced between the rows. He quietly stood up from his seat, walked over to a computer, and within minutes restored the system. His keystrokes were calm, confident, without a hint of panic. "Where did you learn this?" the teacher asked, raising an eyebrow in surprise. He just shrugged. On my own, the internet." The class laughed again, but the laughter was a little more restrained this time. Some of them felt that this wasn't just a coincidence. Yet the students continued to mock him, convincing themselves it was just luck. They didn't know that these brief demonstrations of competence were only a shadow of his true abilities. Even the teacher, who seemed to have seen everything, just frowned and turned back to the other students, leaving him in silence. He sat back down, lifted his head, and his gaze became calm again, like a shadow in the back row. And all of this was only the beginning. The class hadn't yet seen how far he could go, and that each of his quiet steps concealed a strength. Some even began calling him the homeless guy, while others made jokes about his jacket, as if it had witnessed the last century. But he didn't react. His calmness seemed almost unnatural. Yet sometimes, when he leaned over his notebook or examined something on his laptop, a strange concentration appeared in his eyes. It lasted only a moment, but it seemed as if he suddenly became a completely different person. Focused, attentive, dangerously absorbed. These brief moments went unnoticed by most, yet they were the first hints. Sitting before them was someone entirely different from who they thought he was. During the group project for the startup, he barely spoke. The class discussed ideas, argued, tried to stand out. He just sat silently in the corner, taking notes in his notebook. When it was his turn to present, everyone chuckled a little. What could he possibly say? But he began to speak calmly, laying out each step of the strategy. His words fit together logically, like the components of a machine. Marketing risks, financial projections, investor engagement plan. His voice was quiet, yet every sentence carried an impeccable structure of thought. "This is professional-level work," said the professor as he finished. The class froze, exchanging glances. His classmates didn't know what to say. Some dismissed it as luck, others as a random success. He just smiled quietly, looked away, and said, "Just researched." They didn't realize that his silence and modesty were just a facade, that he could lead any project, any business, and do it in a way that made every step seem accidental rather than a carefully planned strategy. And even in that moment, he remained for them the same quiet student, the one who wore an old jacket and scrimped on everything. At the charity event, his attentiveness revealed itself once again. As students arranged boxes for donations, he stood aside, quietly watching. No one noticed how he carefully moved envelopes, checked their contents, and added his own contributions. One girl happened to glance over and saw him discreetly slip an envelope into the box. The amount was far beyond what the poor students could afford. She looked on in astonishment, but said nothing. She only remembered the moment. He didn't seek attention. His kindness was quiet, unnoticed, yet powerful. Every movement, every decision, even the smallest, reflected control and discipline honed over years. To others, he remained just a quiet student in old clothes, an insignificant figure. But those who dared to look a little deeper could see the hidden strength. His abilities weren't limited to understanding people or technology. He possessed experience that made him nearly invincible in any challenging situation. And although no one suspected his true potential, the world around him was already slowly leaving hints. Small deeds, faint suggestions, tiny displays. It was a world that had... Everything happened that evening when the university was visited by a legendary businessman, the owner of a massive corporation, renowned worldwide. Students stood on the bleachers, awaiting speeches, photographs, and autographs. The atmosphere was tense, everyone trying to stand out to catch the wealthy guest's attention. He stood aside in his usual old jacket, seemingly oblivious to the commotion. No one paid him any attention, and this seemed to irritate his classmates even more as they tried to catch the gaze of the wealthy visitor. Suddenly, the corporation owner walked straight up to him. Silence enveloped the hall like a thick layer of air. "Son, are you ready?" the businessman asked, looking directly at him. The student lifted his head, calm, without any unnecessary display. "I told you," he said softly. "First, I have to finish my school of life." The hall trembled with surprise. Classmates turned to one another, trying to comprehend what had just happened. Only now did they realize that their quiet, poor student was actually the heir to a massive corporation. And although that evening he remained calm, almost invisible to most, the first unsettling minutes of the revelation made one thing clear. The world around him would never be the same again. After that evening, his attitude toward his classmates and the surrounding world remained unchanged. He continued attending lectures, but his classmates began to notice his true strength and competence. Their jokes became less bold, and instead of mockery, attempts at friendship appeared, showing respect and even asking for advice. They tried to enter his world, sought his opinion, invited him to joint projects, attempting in every way to gain his favor. He reacted just as calmly as before, only a slight nod, a quiet smile, and nothing more. He continued to do his work and complete tasks flawlessly. But one girl, who had noticed his generous contribution to the charity event, continued to look at him as she had before. She knew beneath that quiet exterior a power lay dormant, one that could change everything. He trained, studied, honed skills that remained unreachable for most. Every action he took, whether a simple calculation or a strategic decision, was part of a grand plan to complete his school of life and discover who truly deserved his attention. A few weeks after his father unexpectedly revealed his true identity to the entire university, he realized that staying unnoticed was no longer possible. His incognito school of life had ended, and the world around him suddenly changed. Classmates who had once tried to talk to him and show respect now went out of their way to pursue his friendship. He listened carefully to their only one girl always remained calm around him. She had seen his true nature from the very beginning, even before the revelation. Calmly, with a faint smile, he approached her and said, "If you want, we can continue our conversation." She answered, "But we never really talked before this moment." "Well then, from this moment, I suggest we start."